The Iraqi government dramatically increased the scale and pace of unlawful executions in 2024. Authorities are carrying out these executions without prior notice to lawyers or family members, and despite credible allegations of torture and violations of the right to a fair trial. While Iraq has ratified the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights in 1971, it has yet to ratify its second optional protocol aiming at the abolition of the death penalty. Capital punishment in Iraq is a legal penalty. It was commonly used by the government of Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was an Iraqi politician and revolutionary who served as the president of Iraq from 1979 until his overthrow in 2003 during the U.S. invasion of Iraq. He previously served as the vice president from 1968 to 1979 and also as the prime minister from 1979 to 1991 and later from 1994 to 2003. A leading member of the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party, he espoused Ba'athism, a mix of Arab nationalism and Arab socialism. The policies and political ideas he championed are collectively known as Saddamism. In Iraq, executions are carried out by hanging. Iraqi law requires execution take place within 30 days of all legal avenues being exhausted. The last legal step, before the execution proceeds, is for the condemned to be handed a red card. This is completed by an official of the court with details of the judgment and a notice that execution is imminent. On August 8, 2004, capital punishment was reinstated in Iraq. Executions resumed in September 2005, after 3 men convicted of murder were executed. On March 9, 2006, an official of Iraq's Supreme Judicial Council confirmed that Iraqi authorities had executed the first insurgents by hanging. 27 people, including 1 woman, were executed by the Iraqi government on September 6, 2006, for high crimes against civilians. On January 19, 2012, 34 people were executed in a single day. Early in October 2013, 42 people convicted of terrorism charges were hanged over the course of 2 days. By that date, a total of 132 people had been executed in 2013. In 1917, Iraq executed a couple on the same day. Abboud and Khajawa were an Iraqi husband and wife, who were both executed on the same day for their heinous crimes. Considered some of the worst criminals in the country's history, the pair were sentenced to death and subsequently hanged for their crimes in 1917. Abboud and Khajawa were Iraqi serial killers and cannibals. They were convicted of murdering and eating the remains of an elderly neighbor and dozens of children in Mosul in 1917, luring most of their victims with the help of their young son. In the mid-1910s, Mosul was struck by a devastating famine due to the inflation of the lira's price. As a result, the residents were left impoverished and resorted to violent crime and eating stray animals. Abboud and Khajawa were not exempted, with the couple reportedly catching and dismembering stray cats and dogs to feed off their meat. The city of Mosul experienced a devastating famine in 1917. The previous year saw a low rainfall, thus, the agricultural season failed and prices rose, and people suffered severe drought. The Ottoman Empire was not in a position to help its citizens. It could barely feed its forces, which were retreating on all fronts during World War I. The situation has worsened more by the flow of hungry people to Mosul from the countryside and nearby towns and villages. They left everything behind in the hope that they would find some food in a big city like Mosul, but they were disappointed. And soon the roads were filled with those poor people who begged for anything to eat and keep them barely alive. And as more hungry people flocked to the city, prices have gone up, the food disappeared from the markets and the corpses scattered in the streets without being lifted by anyone. Crimes, Robberies and killings have also increased in the stricken city. Hunger has reached the point where people would exchange their silver utensils for one loaf of bread, if they find any, and they started to eat weeds and leaves and chase dogs, cats and rats on the roads to catch and eat them. But there was a couple who decided to stop eating the meat of the stray animals that became scarce, and instead, they decided to experience a kind of meat which was abundant but not eaten by one: human flesh. In 1917, Abboud and Khajawa committed their first known murder. Abboud and Khajawa were a dangerous duo, turned carnivals. After killing their neighbor, they then cannibalized her remains, but because her meat was too tough and contained too much fat, which made them very ill, they spent the night vomiting. After killing their first victim, on the next day, Khajawa, the wife, suggested that they target children exclusively, as she expected them to taste much better. She based this on lamb and mutton scales. Abboud immediately agreed, and the couple began devising ways to kidnap children, their potential victims, without being noticed. So they decided to eat a child, this time in the hope that the meat would taste better. So the wife kidnapped a child from the street and returned to the house, where they killed and cooked him. When they ate his meat, they found it savory, which made them kidnap more children. And soon they involved their young son in the kidnapping operations, where he would bring children home under the pretext of playing with them, and then his parents kill and cook them. After they finish eating the victim, they would throw the skull and bones into a hole inside the house, using their young son to lure other children from the street, ostensibly so they could play together. When those innocent children come to play with their son, Abboud and Khajawa kill them and eat their bodies, giving some of the human flesh to their own son to eat. The poor innocent children fall in their traps. When the victim was isolated in their home, Abboud and Khajawa would bludgeon them with a rock. Abboud and Khajawa then skinned, dismembered and cooked the child's remains, which they would subsequently eat, along with their son. The victims' skulls were thrown down in an old well that they had in their backyard of their house. The killings continued. Abboud and Khajawa keep encouraging their son to bring potential victims. They keep murdering dozens of children, sometimes several from the same family. Abboud and Khajawa kept themselves from other people, therefore making it very difficult for other people to know what they were doing. At the end, Abboud and Khajawa were so bold, thinking that they will never be caught. The meat they were getting from the human flesh was too much for Abboud, Khajawa and their son, so they decided to open a restaurant. In the restaurant they served the guests some of the human meat, presenting it as khalia, mutton with spices, an Iraqi dish. Their business at the restaurant was booming. People from all sectors were buying khalia, mutton with spices, an Iraqi dish. Abboud and Khajawa fooled many people, but could not fool an experienced butcher, who came to the restaurant to buy khalia, mutton with spices, an Iraqi dish. The butcher looked at the khalia, mutton with spices, an Iraqi dish. He realized the bones were very hard. Because he was an experienced butcher, he washed off the meat, placed it on a piece of plate to examine the meat. The butcher realized that Abboud and Khajawa sold him human meat, which was a child's hand. The butcher, being a good citizen, decided to report the matter to the police. The butcher took the meat that was served by Abboud and Khajawa to the police station. The police looked at the meat and realized it was actually a human hand. During an inspection of the home of Abboud and Khajawa, led to the discovery of the old well, which had been packed with approximately 100 skulls from children. More than 100 children were killed by Abboud and Khajawa. The spouses were taken to the police station, where Khajawa broke down and confessed all their crimes. Her confession was so horrific the police could not believe their ears. Parts of her confession were reprinted in contemporary newspapers and magazines, shocking the public. The Iraqi community were shocked to hear the gruesome crimes committed by Abboud and Khajawa. The governor asked, How did you do this work? Khajawa, the wife, said, we have endured unbearable hunger at the time of the siege. We finally agreed to eat kittens, and so it was. We kept catching cats and eat them until our street ran out of them. So after that we began to eat dogs until they ran out too, and dogs' flesh tasted much better than that of the cats. After that, when there was nothing left to eat, we tried human flesh. The governor asked again, who did you start with first? Khajawa said, an old woman who we strangled then cooked in a large pot, but we spent all that night vomiting because the flesh was so fatty. And then we slaughtered a small child and found his flesh delicious and very good. The governor asked again, and how did you catch children? Khajawa said, by our son. Each day he would bring us a boy under the pretext of playing with him. We would then strangle him and eat him and bury his bones in a deep hole that we dug inside our house. The governor asked again, how many boys did you eat? Khajawa said, I do not remember exactly, but they can be counted by the number of their skulls. Their guilt was proven after a short trial. Abboud and Khajawa were convicted and sentenced to death. Khajawa showed a little remorse, but her husband Abboud was trying to justify their heinous act. Abboud and Khajawa spent few days on death row before their executions. On the morning of their execution, the Abboud and Khajawa rode 2 donkeys to Bab al-Tawb Square. Bab Baghdad Square is a vibrant town square located in the heart of Karbala, Iraq. This lively gathering place serves as a focal point for both locals and visitors alike. In Bab al-Tawb Square, where makeshift gallows had been erected. Abboud and Khajawa on the way to the execution square, many bystanders cursed, spit at and assaulted the Abboud and Khajawa. An angry mother whose 3 children had been killed by them bit off one of Khajawa's toes, to the extent she almost lost her toes. It was said that a woman was mauling the feet of Khajawa until she cut off her toes and was screaming, they have ate 3 of my children. Wiping the blood off her toes, Khajawa was distressed and apologized profusely, but her husband Abboud remained remorseless, and cursed at the crowd, telling them that the government's poor handling of the famine had caused them to turn to cannibalism, and said the government should be blamed, not them. There was no mercy for the merciless. Abboud and Khajawa were hanged in Bab al-Tawb Square in 1917. Their bodies swing in the wind for hours before they were removed. Their son was given to child protecting authorities to look at. In dominant theories of criminal desistance, marital relationship formation is understood to be a key turning point away from deviant behavior. Empirical studies supporting this claim have largely focused on the positive role of marriage in men's desistance from crime, and relatively few studies have examined the role that non-marital relationships may play in desistance. Thank you for watching Death Row.